Because, when you film every day for 10 months, pretty much, and then you spend the last month and a half actually making sort of really a little bit more fancy music videos and all in the house and in the backyard.
At 77 years old, Stevie Nicks, the woman whose voice once shook arenas, now lives a life so quiet, so fragile, and so lonely that even her closest friends worry about her. Behind the legends, the lace, the wild witchy magic, lies a story the world never fully understood, a story of love lost, friendships buried, and a lifetime of ghosts she still talks to. If you ever loved Fleetwood Mac, keep watching, because this story will hit your heart. Stevie Nicks was the queen of rock, the mystical poet, the voice that carried a generation through heartbreak. But the life she lives today is nothing like the world imagines. After decades of fame, losses, and painful choices, Stevie now spends most of her days alone, writing in journals, walking barefoot through her garden, and speaking to memories no one else can see. Before we go on, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. The Girl Who Lived in Suitcases. Before Stevie Nicks became the mystical queen of rock, she was simply a lonely little girl being dragged from city to city, never allowed to plant roots. Born in Phoenix in 1948, she spent her entire childhood moving because of her father's job with Greyhound, living in Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and California before she even understood what home meant. She rarely made friends, rarely unpacked boxes, and often sat alone in new bedrooms whispering melodies to herself. Her mother sheltered her intensely, keeping her away from the outside world, while her grandfather, the only person who truly saw her, fed her musical soul. He bought her more than 100 country and rock singles and taught her how to harmonize before she even knew how to spell the word. When she turned 16, her parents gave her a cheap Goya guitar, and that night she wrote her first song, a simple line about loving and losing that shocked her parents with its emotional depth. Stevie already knew she was different, that her imagination was louder than real life, and that music was a language only she understood. She later said she survived childhood by building her own world in her mind because she never felt she belonged anywhere else. Those early years, isolated, rootless, dream-heavy, shaped the woman she would become. A storyteller, a wanderer, someone who carried her own universe inside her because she never trusted the real one. Long before the world saw her as a legend, she was already living in a world of lyrics, when fate introduced her to Lindsey Buckingham. Stevie's life shifted permanently the night she heard a young man singing "California Dreamin'" at a youth gathering in California. His name was Lindsey Buckingham, and the moment she walked toward that voice and began harmonizing with him, something invisible locked them together. They had no idea they had just begun one of the most iconic and painful duos in music history. Soon they were rehearsing in garages, sharing dreams in tiny apartments, and forming a bond that was part romance, part destiny, and part curse. Their first major attempt at fame came with their album Buckingham Nicks in 1973, a beautiful record that tragically flopped, leaving them broke and exhausted. Stevie worked multiple jobs, scrubbing houses and waiting tables, while Lindsey stayed home crafting demos with obsessive intensity. They were financially ruined, emotionally drained, and creatively starving, yet Stevie refused to quit. Then fate intervened. Mick Fleetwood heard one of Lindsey's demos and wanted him in Fleetwood Mac, but Lindsey said he wouldn't join unless Stevie came too. That single demand changed music history. Overnight, they went from struggling nobodies to members of one of the greatest bands in rock. Rumours, the album that destroyed everyone. When Fleetwood Mac went into the studio to record Rumours in 1976, Stevie and Lindsey's love was over. They had to stand inches apart and sing into microphones about how heartbroken they were. One of the best albums ever made came from pure emotional destruction. Stevie penned Dreams as a peaceful assertion of freedom. Lindsey responded with Go Your Own Way, a song that was so harsh and intimate that Stevie said it felt like a punch every time she had to sing it next to him. Christine McVie was writing about her failing marriage to John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood was suffering with his own relationship that was falling apart. Everyone was sad, angry, and out of control. But they still went to the studio every day, using their anguish as fuel. There was cocaine everywhere, sleepless nights, jealous outbursts, screaming bouts, and times when the band members wouldn't talk unless they were singing. And yet, from all this mayhem came an album that sold more than 40 million copies and changed the music industry. Stevie subsequently remarked that making Rumours felt like bleeding onto tape, with each song reflecting a new wound that never entirely healed. The fans heard magic, but the musicians just felt pain. The studio was a war zone, and they had to sing every song out loud like a confession. Rumours didn't only make them famous, they hurt them in ways that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. The secret love that almost ruined her life. While everyone was focused on Stevie and Lindsey's failed romance, a much bigger scandal was going on behind the scenes that almost brought Fleetwood Mac to its knees. In the late 1970s, after Rumours caused Stevie to have an emotional breakdown, he started an affair with Mick Fleetwood, the band's drummer, even though he was married to Jenny Boyd at the time. Stevie was spinning out of control, tired, lonely, and overwhelmed by celebrity. Mick was struggling with his own failing marriage and personal problems. They sought each other when they were weak late at night, but as Stevie later said, it was never love. It was remorse, bewilderment, and anguish masquerading as comfort. The fallout was terrible when Jenny found out about the affair. Christine McVie was angry, Lindsey was upset and humiliated, and the connection between the band members almost fell apart. Stevie subsequently said, "It was the most selfish thing I ever did, and I wish I hadn't done it." She felt that shame for decades, and she said that the anguish she caused Jenny lasted with her long after the affair ended. Mick and Stevie tried to keep things going for a while, even going on trips together, but the truth was too much to handle. They were too hurt, too guilty, and too conscious of the wreckage around them. Their breakup wasn't spectacular, it was just going to happen. But the emotional scars stayed on stage for years. Fans still think that songs like Storms include bits of regret from that time. The blunder not only broke hearts, but it also almost ended the band for good. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. The love story that never healed. Joe Walsh. Stevie Nicks loved Joe Walsh of the Eagles more than any other man in her life. Not Lindsey, Mick, or Don Henley. Stevie was emotionally broken when they met in 1983 because of her failed marriage, her drug use, and years of trouble. Joe knew what pain was like because he had been through it himself, especially the devastating death of his daughter Emma. Their bond was instant, subtle, and very spiritual. Stevie remarked that Joe was the only man who made her feel safe enough to think about a true future. Their nights were full of meaningful talks, music, and an understanding that didn't need words. She subsequently said, "Joe Walsh was the love of my life." But their similarities were what brought them down. They were both dealing with addiction, emotional problems, and the stress of being famous. They tried to save each other, but they ended up going down together. Stevie knew that staying with Joe would put both of their lives in danger, so she left, devastated but determined to live. She penned, "Has anyone ever written anything for you?" Years later, as a memorial to him and the daughter he lost, Stevie still talks about Joe in a tender way that she doesn't talk about anyone else. The mistake marriage that haunts Stevie today. In 1983, Stevie lost her best friend, Robin Snyder Anderson, to leukemia just days after she gave birth. It was one of the worst tragedies of her life. Stevie contacted Robin after every show, tour, and tragedy. She was the emotional support Stevie needed to get through her journey to fame. Stevie was absolutely broken when Robin died. She was so sad and wanted to protect Robin's newborn kid that she did something that stunned everyone. She married Robin's widower, Kim Anderson, less than 3 months after the funeral. Stevie has remarked that the choice wasn't romantic. It was a gut feeling that came from grief, remorse, and a strong desire to keep Robin alive via her child. She assumed that by taking Robin's place, she might help everyone, including herself. The marriage fell apart nearly right away instead. Addiction. The demon that almost killed her Stevie was facing an addiction that almost killed her, even though she was famous and glamorous. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, cocaine usage was very common in the music business. Stevie used it to get through long tours, emotional breakdowns, and tiredness. But soon, she wasn't using it to deal with things. She was using it to get by. Doctors found a hole in her nasal septum after years of excessive cocaine usage, which made her addiction worse. Stevie was scared and checked into the Betty Ford Center in 1986, desperate to become clean. The lonely millionaire. Stevie Nicks now lives a rather quiet and lonely existence, even though she has a lot of money. Her net worth can be more than $120 million, yet her personal life is modest and fragile. She lives in a little Mediterranean-style house in Los Angeles that is 1,620 square feet. It has velvet curtains, crystals, lace shawls, handwritten notes, and bins full of notebooks from the past. Most of the time she is alone, writing, thinking, and wandering barefoot in her garden at dawn. She doesn't go out much, doesn't date much, and stays away from crowds. "I don't want to be famous anymore," she declared once. "I'm looking for tranquility." Her friends say that she talks to the spirits of individuals she has lost, like her mother, father, Christine McVie, Robin, and sometimes even Lindsey or Joe. It's not a mansion, it's a safe place. She writes in a music studio, but a lot of the tunes never leave the room. The ghosts Stevie still writes to. Stevie's lifelong habit of writing in a journal is one of the most unsettling things about her life. She has written letters, poems, confessions, recollections, dreams, apologies, and everything she can't express out loud every day since the mid-1970s. There are thousands of papers in her workshop, all neatly stacked in white boxes with only dates on the labels. She writes to Robin, her mother Barbara, Lindsey Buckingham, Joe Walsh, old acquaintances, and even the younger version of herself, who never thought she would endure stardom. Stevie means it when she says, "My journals are my children." These pages are the closest thing she has to family. They tell the story of a life that was full of tragedy, beauty, and intensity. She has already chosen who will get them: her niece, her goddaughters, and Robin's son. She wants them to know who she truly was behind the shawls and the lights on stage. Stevie has said that her journals have secrets she never wants to see the light of day. These include stories of love, betrayal, magic, addiction, heartbreak, and the strange things that have happened to her since she was a youngster. Her health battles, what the public doesn't know. Stevie doesn't talk about her health in public very often, but the truth is that her body has suffered a lot over the years because of mental stress, touring, and drug usage. After fighting cocaine and Klonopin addiction, she got another terrible blow. The Epstein-Barr virus, which made her tired all the time and gave her pneumonia again and again. At one time, she got double pneumonia and was so sick that she thought she might never be able to sing again. Stevie was scared when the COVID-19 pandemic started. She told an interviewer that getting the infection could kill me right away because of the damage to her lungs. Since then, she has stayed away from crowds, always wears a mask, and doesn't travel as often. She has trouble breathing now and takes inhalers to help her lungs. Her stamina has dropped a lot. It takes her weeks to get ready for and recover from even one concert. Stevie says that getting older has been hard. The legend who never had children. One of the most moving parts of Stevie's story is how hard it is for her to be a mother. She never had kids, and even though she stands by her choice, the truth makes her feel both strong and sad. During her best years, she was always on the road, playing in huge venues, writing songs, dealing with heartbreak, and fighting addiction. She thought that if she became a mother, she would have to choose between her family and her music, and she knew she would have chosen the child. That made her afraid. She added, "My job was to write songs that helped the women who did become mothers. But the fact that she doesn't have any kids still hurts her. She often thinks about who her daughter would have been, or what type of mother she would have become. The woman who outlived everyone." Stevie Nicks is 77 years old and is now in a quiet but very lonely part of her life. She has lost several of the most significant people in her life, including her parents, her best friend Robin, and her bandmate Christine McVie, who died in 2022 and left a hole that Stevie claims will never mend. She still thinks about Lindsey, Joe Walsh, and Don Henley, but she doesn't touch them anymore. She leads a solitary life in her Los Angeles home, where she has journals, crystals, shawls, handwritten songs, and Polaroids of a world that is no longer there. She still creates songs, but a lot of them go unnoticed. She still talks to Christine and Robin in her prayers. She still thinks that love comes to her in her dreams. If Stevie Nicks and her music ever touched your heart, let her know by hitting the like button. Subscribe for more stories of the legends we grew up with and the truths the world never told us. Until next time, take care of your heart.